We have the dialogue expertise coming up where we'll be talking about the F&B industry post-pandemic. Increased mobility following the removal of the COVID-19 related restriction late last year helps accelerate the recovery of Indonesia's food and beverage industry. The government has even projected the industry to grow between 5% and 7% this year, back to the levels before the pandemic.
The food and beverage industry is expected to remain the backbone of the growth in the manufacturing sector and other economic activities in the country. The important role of food and beverage industry can be seen from its significant contribution to the gross domestic product or GDP. According to data issued by the Statistic Indonesia or BPS, the GDP from food and beverage industry was reported at 813.06 trillion rupiah, or about $54.23 billion in 2022, which showed an increase of almost 5% from 775.10 trillion rupiah in the previous year. The food and beverage industry has consistently grown since the last decade. During the last 10 years, the highest growth was recorded at 2012 at 10.33%. Meanwhile, the slowest growth occurred in 2020, namely at 1.58% due to the COVID-19 pandemic in the country. According to the industry ministry's estimate, the non-oil and gas processing industry contributed 16.48% to the GDP in 2022. Then, the food and beverage industry contributed the most to the non-oil and gas processing industry with about 38%. According to a report published by the United States Department of Agriculture, or USDA, on April 2023, there are about 8,556 large and medium-sized food and beverage manufacturers and 1.6 million micro and small establishments in Indonesia. The number of Indonesian workers in the food and beverage processing industry reaches 4.6 million, or 30% of the total workforce in the manufacturing sector. Large and medium-sized food processing companies in Indonesia source raw materials both locally and globally. Main imported ingredients include wheat, milk powder, cheese, meat, and horticultural products. Indofood continues to lead the packaged food market in Indonesia. The company has a wide-ranging product portfolio, including local and multinational brands. Other major processors include Nestlé, Mayora Indah, and Royal Friesland Campina or Frisian Flag. Many of their products are sold through modern stores. The government's decision to lift the public mobility restrictions in all regions of Indonesia at the end of last year has accelerated the recovery of the country's economy, which suffered a decline in 2020 and 2021. With an improvement in economic conditions, almost all industries have operated normally, like before the pandemic. The food and beverage industry is one of the industries which have grown impressively. Even the Ministry of Industry estimates that the food and beverage industry will grow between 5 and 7%. Improvements in people's purchasing power and an increase in the number of consumers will trigger growth in the food industry, which is expected to further increase in the future. Although the prospects for food and beverage industry are still quite promising, there are several challenges that could disrupt the growth, such as rising commodity prices, geopolitics, and climate change. The increase in wheat prices due to the Russian-Ukrainian war and the rise in other commodity prices caused by the decline in production due to climate change will have a negative impact on food and beverage industry in Indonesia. High raw material prices will lead to higher production costs. Processed food producers usually refrain from raising the prices to maintain their market share. For this, however, they have to sacrifice their profit margins. But with a large population and the people's rising purchasing power, the food and beverage industry has a very bright future in the years to come.
Now, after being hard hit by the COVID-19 pandemic, the food and beverage industry has grown impressively during the last 2 years. The government is upbeat. The industry's growth will return to pre-pandemic levels this year. It is an honor to have with us this afternoon Adhi S. Lukman, the chairman of Indonesian Food and Beverage Producers Association, or GAPMMI. Pak Adhi will discuss with us about the challenges as well as the opportunities of the food and beverage industry in Indonesia. Welcome, Pak Adhi.
Well,
thank you for coming to
Yeah.
PVRI World Studio.
Yeah.
Pak Adhi, the food and beverage industry was among the business sector that was hard hit by the
Yep.
COVID-19
Yep.
pandemic, but it has gradually recovered now. Can you elaborate of the actual condition of the industry at the moment?
Well, of course, the food and beverage industry sector impacted by the COVID-19. Usually our growth yearly is around 7 to 10% annual growth. Unfortunately, during the pandemic in 2020, our growth is very low. Even though it's still positive growth, 1.5% growth. And after that, we can anticipate all the impacted, and then we can grow in the 2021, 2.5. And then the last 2022, we grew around 3.5%. And 2.5% in 2021 and 2022. 4.9%.
4.9%.
Yeah, 4.9%. Right. And fortunately, we still growing and better in the first quarter 2023, around 5.3%. So,
5.3%. So it has been continually rising.
Yeah. We towards the normal growth. Yeah.
Right. Pak Adhi, the Ministry of Industry has estimated that the F&B industry will grow between 5 to 7% this year.
Yeah.
Then this will be returning to the pre-pandemic levels. Do you think such a growth target, 5 to 7%, is actually achievable, or is this too optimistic of us?
Yeah, we optimistic that can achieve this growth because several factors support this growth. Now the government already decided it's no more pandemic. This has become endemic, and community and consumers can make activity normally. And then we also try to increase our exports to several countries. And fortunately, last year our export increased 18%. Our
18%.
Export, 18%.
Is this above the regular number?
Yes. This is for semi-processed and processed foods. And we believe that this year will increase again to become a better, because we have some demand from the emerging market like from Africa, Middle East, and of course China and India is become a new market for our food and beverage products.
All right.
Unfortunately, the US and Europe stagnant the growth. Last year, our export to US is around 1.5 million US dollar. 1.5 billion. And this year, almost the same. No more growth for the US market. But for India, China, Middle East is growing better.
Adhi, why would you say that our export to US and Europe is stagnant at the moment?
Because impacted by the economic situation in US and Europe. So that's why this is it's very difficult for us to achieve our targets. And also some demand from that countries is decreasing, a little bit decreasing. So that's why our export is a little bit stagnant.
So would you say it is better to actually focus on other countries?
Yes. Now we are focusing on other countries.
What countries, Pa?
Now the Middle East, Africa, China, India is become our target for the next.
The top countries.
Yeah.
Okay. Pa, what would be the main factors that can drive our F&B industry to grow this year?
Yeah, of course, as I mentioned, there are no more pandemic, endemic, and become the consumers and community can do activities normal, And of course, these years, we believe this is political years. Political years, many activities will be done by many parties, and of course, with activity, they have some demand for food and beverage, and also I believe economic Indonesian become better growing this year, around 5%. So this is also encourage our industry to be growth.
Would you say with the election coming up next year,
Yep.
will this drive the F&B to grow further on the positive
Yes,
rate?
yes.
Or would it actually make it more unsure?
As far as the safe and normal situation in during the election periods, based on our experience, last experience in the election period, our sales increasing. Our sales increasing during the election period.
So it's good.
Yes.
It's good for the
Yeah.
economy. Pak Adhi, most of the processed food products are sold in the domestic market.
Yeah.
How large is the country's processed food exports at present, and how is the trend so far?
Yes, for semi-processed and processed food, last year we achieved 11 billion US dollar for export, and increasing from previous years is around 9 billions. This is the first time we achieved more than 10 billion US dollars.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and this is exclude palm oil. If including palm oil, the palm oil itself, the export is around 39 billion US dollar. So it's a huge number for the exports. And we believe that this year we can achieve more than 11 billion.
What do you think is driving this increase in export, Pak?
Because first is some countries, they have a problem with the productions. And we can replace their demands, and then we can increase our export. And then the second is, as I mentioned, some emerging countries like Africa, Middle East, India, also their economic is become better, and their demand is increasing. So that's why we now targeting that countries.
Now, from export, we move on. Let's talk about imports.
Yeah.
Most F&B producers still import part of their raw materials, but
Yeah.
what commodities are mostly imported by the local industry at present?
Yes, of course, we don't have wheat, 100% import. And for the dairy industry, more than 80% also import for our raw materials. Soybean is around 70%. Corn for the food industry, almost 90% we import for corns, and also some flavoring, coloring, and other ingredients also we still import around 60 to 70%. So this is our problem and challenges for our industries. So many raw materials we have to import because not available in the local markets. Also sugar for industry.
Sugars
as well, and almost 100% we import, and salt. Salt we import yearly is around 500,000 metric tons.
Is there any way you can suggest where we can make this better?
Yes, of course, the government have to pay attention in the upstream, because this is very important. Government have to support to increase the production in the upstreams for the dairy, like soybean also, and many commodities. So this is and I think government have to focus which commodity to be chosen to grow in the local.
You mean more focus,
Yes, more
on
focus,
certain
yes,
areas,
yes.
on what you have mentioned before. Right. Pak Adhi, the world economy at this moment is still hampered by geopolitics and as well as the climate change. And this have caused a sharp increase in prices of main commodities. How severe is their impact on Indonesia's F&B industry?
Yes, of course, since 2 years ago, we were impacted by the increasing of the raw materials, energy, and logistic as well. So we impacted to our food and beverage industries. Unfortunately, we cannot increase our selling price as much as the increment of the raw material. So this is, we suffer with our bottom line, our margins, and so that's why this is the main focus. We have to make more productivity and efficiency in our processing line to anticipate this increment of the input in our industries. So that's why we do hope we can collaborate with the governments to manage how we can anticipate the increment of the raw material, energy, etc.
How much do you think, Pak, this geopolitics as well as climate change will affect our growth in the coming future?
The geopolitics, of course, no one can predict with what happen in the futures. And I think for the climate change, government now aware about this impact of the climate change, and especially for the availability of the water and weather. So that's why the government have to anticipate this. How big the impact? I think it's very big impact if we cannot anticipate this challenge. So that's why we have to manage well with and together with the governments how to minimize the impact.
But lastly, let's talk about hygiene.
Yep.
I mean, hygiene foods is definitely one of the main challenges in the F&B industry.
Yep.
What efforts have so far been done by the association to promote food safety awareness among its members?
Yes, of course, our challenge in Indonesia, so many producers, especially our SMEs industries, some of them they don't aware, or some of them they don't have any knowledge of the hygiene and food safety. So that's why we encourage them to apply the hygiene system. And of course, as our member, we encourage them to do to comply with the regulation, to comply with the standard of the food safety. It's very important. Food safety for food industry is very important, because without food safety, we cannot compete with competitor in the market. So that's why we always remind our member to comply with the regulation, to comply with the standard, and to keep the food safety as a priority in their processing line until to be consumed by consumers.
Exactly, because hygiene is always a priority, and it is a big issue here in Indonesia. Bapak Adhi Lukman, Chairman of GAPMMI, thank you so much for coming to our studio.
Welcome.